Should I just skip this?
If mean I ended up doing that because I was like, we're gonna go over it
Yeah,
again.
whatever. I'll go over it again. Whoa, the Balahara. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, hold on. I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble. Oh, no. The game doesn't look right. Oh, no. That's picking up on the recording. I am concerned about Monster Hunter Wilds. I don't think that's a particularly hot take to have in this day and age in the Monster Hunter community, given the community's response at large to the performance of Monster Hunter Wilds, and that I think is the main concern right now. Because honestly, everything else in this game looks fantastic. The monster designs are on point. Weapons have evolved in such a way that just it feels more fun. They're listening to community feedback and tweaking, how weapons work, and it feels like they're trying to make this game the best it can possibly be. And I'm all here for it. I have been a fan of Monster Hunter since, Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. Back on the Wii U. I've been playing every single game in the series up until that point, and I went back and played things like Freedom Unite, Monster Hunter 1, all that fun stuff, even Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. But Wilds is the first time with this series where my excitement is just dissolving into disappointment and borderline apathy. Most of the time I see news for this game, I just think to myself, oh man, this game looks great, I wish I could play it. So let's go back to the first Monster Hunter Wilds beta test, back in whenever the fuck it happened. I'm gonna put it up on screen right now. I was so fucking excited for it, especially because the demo was releasing on PC, right? And usually for these kinds of demo releases, they usually only do them on consoles. Very rarely do we get a PC drop for these kinds of things. So I was elated. I was so jazzed. I was ready to sink my teeth into this game and get a little taste of what was to come with Wilds release. And I get into the game, and I skip the cutscene because, like, listen, I'll get the story when I get the game, and I get into the game proper, and this happens. Now, okay, I had to, rationalize that, like, look, this is a beta, right? This is a game that isn't done yet. I'm not a developer. I don't know how these things get built, right? And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know what I'm talking about or chastise the developers for not making the perfect game right away, because it's not done yet, right? We were still months away from the release of Wilds, and I was still optimistic. I held on to that optimism of, like, Capcom has been making, or the Monster Hunter dev team has been making great games. Even if some of them I don't like as much as others, they've still been making great games. They've been making them run on fucking 3DSs, bro. They have enough skill in their dev team to make Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, arguably one of the greatest games of all time, run on a 3DS and have that be like a phenomenal experience. So, going on to PC, you would think that they would be able to take that prowess and make something that would be just the best version of Monster Hunter they could possibly make, right? So after that first demo period ended, I waited, and then we got confirmation of the minimum required specs for PC for Monster Hunter Wilds, and my optimism faded even more than it already has when we learned that not only is DLSS a required feature of your graphics card, but you also need to have frame generation enabled to maintain 60 frames per second. I am what you would call a video game apologist. I look at something like Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky, and I think to myself, well, that was it. Those two instances were dev teams being pushed to their absolute limit, and, the reason that those games turned out the way they did is just because of mismanagement. I maintained my sense of optimism for Wilds when I first played the beta, and this shit happened, and I saw the funny memes and videos of people posting with the PS1 level Monster Hunter graphics, and I was like, okay, listen, this game isn't done yet. Obviously, it'll get more optimized later on. Then the second demo drops, and, same optimization level from that. And it's like, okay, well, obviously they're gonna have better performance for the main branch of the game whenever it drops, right? And then the benchmark releases, and I start doing some testing. All right, so let's go into my methodologies and how I conducted this test and exactly what settings I used and stuff like that. Starting off, I have to say that because of you know, what I do here on YouTube and the career path I've chosen and things like that, I have to test this game in 2 distinct scenarios. I have to test this game when I'm recording and when I'm not recording, right? Because I don't have a secondary computer to capture game footage from my computer. I know a lot of professional streamers have that, but it's just not in the cards for me right now. So I have to skim a little bit of game performance off the top and transfer that into recording footage on my computer. And usually I don't really have an issue with that, right? Here's a screenshot of my fast fetch window on Arch Linux. So you can see that I've got some pretty beefy hardware on here, right? I have very rarely encountered a situation where my CPU and GPU choices have ever negatively impacted game performance for me. I should also clarify I was using Steam Proton Hotfix. Here is the exact build number of the version of Hotfix I was using to conduct all of these tests. Here's the GPU driver version I was using during these tests. And then things like the kernel and all that stuff you can see on my fast fetch window. I'm trying to make as much information as I can available for this test because, like, all of these little things can impact the performance of the game, right? Okay, so let's start this off. I conducted 3 tests, 4 recordings each. 2 of the recordings had my OBS capturing footage, and 2 of them I was not capturing footage via OBS, but I still have screenshots of the results. And the reason I did so many of these tests is because I wanted to, get results with OBS capture on and off, but I also wanted to get results with frame generation on and off. I wanted to see just how frame generation would affect the performance of the game, right? There was also a mode for NVIDIA Reflex, and I don't quite know what NVIDIA Reflex does because every time I tried to research what the feature actually does, I just got like marketing spiels and articles that seem to be written by NVIDIA themselves or even written by AI at times, and I still to this day do not know what NVIDIA Reflex does, and quite honestly, I don't think I care. I think it's just more fucking buzzword garbage that is being shoved in by NVIDIA, but we will get to my biases and all of that at the end of the video. Alright, let's get started with test number 1. Alright, so for test number 1, I wanted to get sort of a baseline experience with this game. I wanted to just go into the options, set everything to medium, and then hit play on the benchmark. But I obviously had to change a few things here and there just to suit my own personal taste because these are features I would change in the base game, right? The only 3 things I changed from the default medium balanced setting is I turned off bloom, I turned off motion blur, and I turned off depth of field. I should also clarify, I had AMD FSR enabled set to balanced. Now, why did I have AMD FSR? Why wasn't I using NVIDIA DLSS? Well, the reason being is because when I enabled NVIDIA DLSS, I did not have access to frame generation. I only had it when I was using AMD FSR. I don't know why I didn't have access to frame gen with DLSS enabled. We do have a test later on that includes NVIDIA DLSS instead of AMD FSR, but we'll get to that here in a second. And I should also clarify, I was running this with the resolution set to 1440p and a 16:9 aspect ratio because my main monitor is 21:9. So when I was recording and playing the game at 21:9, it just absolutely tanked performance. And so I thought, you know what, for the sake of recording, for the sake of making sure that my footage is the same across all the platforms and everybody's able to view my content just fine, I decided, screw it, I'm just gonna play the game at 16:9, I'm gonna record at 16:9, and we'll see how that affects performance, right? Alright, so of these 4 runs, let's start off with the not recording results, considering I really only have screenshots of the results in the benchmark. So for frame generation off, I got a score of 18.5K. What does that mean? I don't fucking know. We will get into my confusion on this shit later. But with frame gen turned on, I got a lower score of 15.8K, but a higher frame rate. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what is this score even supposed to be? How is this calculated? Can I see any finer granular details on this benchmark? Can I see how the score is calculated? No, you just don't get access to this information in the actual fucking benchmark. And it blows my mind how an average FPS can be higher, but the score can be lower. Let's move on to the actual footage real quick. Let's take a look at the footage. Let's start with the results. So with FrameGen turned off, I got a score of 15.5K at 46 FPS. Not great, but considering I'm recording and doing all of this stuff on Linux, there's gonna be some overhead and there's gonna be some weird performance here and there. That's fine. But, you know, still got a performance of good. 46 FPS is not great. I would prefer to have 60, but 46 is definitely more than playable. I turned frame generation on with all the settings I laid out earlier. Everything set to medium. By the way, I want to clarify, all of this is set to medium. And I got the lowest score of the entire testing run. This was the second test I did, and it got the lowest score of 12.9K. It even fucking spits in my face and gives me a playable ranking. So not only is the frame rate above 60 FPS, well, above with giant air quotes around it, considering it's just fake AI frames, it gives me the lowest fucking score. I didn't change anything aside from enabling and disabling frame generation. I did not fuck with the settings in the slightest. I did not change how anything was rendered. I did not update my computer. I didn't change the version of Proton I was using. I didn't do fucking anything except turn FrameGen off and on. I don't understand how this benchmark works. I do not understand how any of this works. And for the record, I wasn't doing anything on my computer aside from running this benchmark. I wasn't watching YouTube videos, I wasn't listening to music, I wasn't chatting with friends on Discord. I had nothing running except this benchmark and OBS sometimes. When I wasn't recording, I closed OBS entirely. And I'm still baffled. I'm looking at these results right now and I'm just fucking baffled at what was going on. Maybe it was just some weird testing stuff. Maybe I could have run things, multiple times and averaged out their score. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and say that my results are 100%, scientifically bound or anything like that, but it's crazy that I even ran into this situation to begin with. Anyway, let's move on to the second round of testing that I did. This time, I changed everything to the low preset. I didn't really change anything else, just kind of set everything to low, turned the resolution down to 1080p, that was another important distinction. I turned everything down to 1080p and kept the 16:9 aspect ratio and set the AMD FSR to performance. So with all of these changes in mind, let's look at the results for the OBS captured tests. We'll start with frame generation on. I got a score of good at 19.3K at 113.64 frames per second. I still don't know why these results are coming back the way they are, but there's definitely numbers there, there's definitely frames there. The frame count is definitely higher than it was with the medium average preset. Obviously turning the resolution down to 1080p helped quite a bit. But then if we go to the frame generation turned off, the benchmark is kind of going against what I would assume it would do. It gave me a rank of excellent with 22.5K points. And that's the highest score I've gotten in this entire test that I've done. This 2-3 hours I spent just running this benchmark over and over and over again. Everything set to low. With FrameGen turned off, gives me the highest score with the best average FPS. And I want to say, during every single test I did, whenever the test got to the main Savannah area, it was basically impossible for me to hit 60 frames per second in this main Savannah area during the gameplay. The gameplay section. I'm gonna get into that here in a second. And for the footage you were just watching, the low preset recorded footage testing run, I got a score of 18.9K at 55.94 frames per second. And this is with frame gen turned off, obviously. And with frame gen turned on, it got 16.3. So it seems like, you know, the more I do these tests, the more I realize that it's like, hey, actually generating these fake frames is taking overhead of performance. So, I mean, okay, we're gonna get to conclusions here in a little bit, but like, I'm starting to draw some opinions here. And so for the third test, I tried to strike a kind of a balance between low and medium, right? So I bumped the resolution back up to 1440p, kept the 16:9, and I kept the AMD FSR setting to performance. I figured this would be a good way to like try to maybe get some more frames. And what I did was I took the medium preset and sort of toned down a few options that would greatly impact performance. I'm just gonna list them all off right now because I wrote them all down, thankfully. So, like I said, I started with the medium preset, turned texture quality down to low, turned mesh quality to medium, sky and cloud settings were set to low, render distance was set to medium, shadows were set to low, and for one of these tests, for one of the frame gen off tests, I switched to NVIDIA DLSS. And the interesting thing is, I feel like this was the worst performing set of tests by far. But interestingly though, the NVIDIA DLSS settings with frame gen turned off got an average higher FPS than with FSR. With FSR, I got 14.5K, and with DLSS, I got 17.5K. Again, it's hard to judge like how these tests are actually like balanced at all, because I have no idea how these numbers are calculated. But with recording turned off and DLSS enabled, I got 20.9K, which is pretty good, second highest out of all of the tests. And just like every other test, routinely, the frame generation score was the lowest, even though the FPS was the highest. So it's like, I guess because of the overhead of trying to generate frames, it's reducing performance, but it looks smoother, so people are okay with it. I fucking hate this AI generated frame bullshit. I think it's so lame and dumb, but whatever. That's what the results for balanced turned out to be. Never in any of the tests I did could I ever get above 60 FPS, with the exception of frame generation turned on. But I'm still, all right, fuck it, let's just get into this right now. I don't like that frame generation is a requirement for this game. I think it ultimately locks out a ton of people from playing this game and experiencing it, but not only that, it sets a really unhealthy precedent for the gaming industry. I have an RTX 3080 with fucking 10 gigs of VRAM. How the fuck is that not enough anymore? How are these games getting so bloated and so unoptimized that you can't hit 60 FPS using an RTX 3080? Remember when this card was the god of all cards and it was like the best performing thing? I didn't buy this game at full MSRP, but I still spent a pretty fucking penny on this GPU. And not even a couple years later, I'm being told that the $450 I spent on this card, that's just all for naught, and I need to spend $2,000 to get a new GPU? Fuck off. Fuck off, NVIDIA. Fuck off, Capcom. This game just doesn't need to be this. It doesn't need to have this much of graphical fidelity. It just doesn't. I can understand using performance to accurately simulate every little animal in the savannah and accurately simulate how everything is happening in the world and how each monster interacts with each other. I totally understand that, and I think that that's the main draw of this game, obviously. Like, you have this big open wide world, and all of these creatures are interacting with each other, and they're all changing the environment, and the environment itself is taking sweeping changes throughout different times of day, and there's a lot of really cool mechanics to this game and to the world at large, right? So if you want to have this world that's this big and this wide and this open and this complex, why would you then, on top of all of that, throw on such a graphical demand that you can't run this game using what was considered to be god tier equipment not even 3 years ago? What the fuck are you doing? It doesn't make any sense to me. And the absolute worst part that I just haven't mentioned up until this point are the fucking artifacts. Every single test I did, no matter if it was recorded or not recorded, whatever, whether I was playing the demo or running the benchmark, every single time I got to this point in the benchmark and around this area in the demo, I got these horrific fucking artifacts. I'm going to shrink the size of my screen right now and put some calming footage around it so that I don't give any of you seizures, because it is actually kind of a real, it's a real thing that could happen. Not only is the frame rate shit, dipping below 30 frames per second in a lot of areas, not only am I borderline required to use a feature that makes everything look like I'm viewing it through a block of gelatin, even if I were to go through all of that, there are still bewilderingly bad artifacting where like little triangles coming off of characters span across the entire world, and I get flashes on the screen that make my fucking head hurt, and models just break. They go down to the lowest possible. I even got that lowest possible LOD draw distance bug where the monster becomes like 7 triangles, and then you go in and you say, hey, don't worry, we'll fix it using AI. I had frame generation enabled during the time I played the second beta test that went live. And again, you know, I know that this is an older version of the game, and I know that optimizations were made after this build went out to the public. But even then, with frame generation enabled, I couldn't tell what was happening at times. Both sides of my screen became just black bars, dude. It felt like I was playing Super Mario Bros. 3 again. You know in Mario 3, when you have that right area of the screen that just is kind of like a slightly discolored mess because it's still trying to load in the different parts of the level and everything? It was like that for not just the sides of the screen, but for my character moving around. Because you have AI trying to approximate what your character is supposed to look like and just generate more frames like it's a goddamn animation YouTube video of like, oh, we're gonna take the best anime fight scenes and we're gonna make them go at 120 frames per second so that you can properly absorb the information. No, I don't think that's how any of this works. And you don't even need to take my word for it. You can just look at the footage I recorded. It feels like I'm watching a game through a block of fucking Jello at most times, dude. Like, and it feels even worse to play, right? It might look smooth, but there's like this weird jittery fucking sludge to every individual movement I make on the screen. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good. Why the fuck is it even there if it is ultimately a negative if it ultimately has a negative impact on the game? I mean, if I put my conspiratorial hat on for a second, the reason that I think is happening is just so that Nvidia can sell more fucking cards, and, you know, the gaming industry at large has become complacent in just letting everybody pack as many fucking graphical features as they can into their video games just to make it so that you can spend $2,000 on the newest GPU to get the best performance. I don't know if it goes that deep. I'm not going to say that that is what is happening, because ultimately I don't know. The logical part of my brain knows that I don't know how these games are made. And it would be, frankly, irresponsible of me to claim that any of this stuff is happening. But what I can do is I can show you what my experience is, and I can show you what I've seen and what information I've gathered, and you can come to your own conclusions based on what I have. I was really excited for Monster Hunter Wilds, but with how it's performing now, I don't think it's worth my $70 fucking dollars. I don't think I'm gonna be getting this game, at least not at launch. And also, I want to go into this real quick. I don't like... I obviously have already mentioned how I don't like how weirdly obtuse this benchmark is, and you know how it's not telling me exactly how this score is being calculated and what types of performances I could, like what types of settings I could change to make performance a little bit better. I don't like how every single time I do a test I get wildly different numbers, even though the FPS seems to be higher, because you know, even though it's not, because it's AI frames. This benchmark ultimately is not going to be equivalent to real-world performance. It is a vertical slice. It is very contained, very scripted, very carefully built. I don't know if it is a ploy to make it seem like the game is performing better than it is. I don't know if this is being done to make consumers a little bit less skeptical whenever this game finally drops. I don't know, because Capcom has never done a benchmark prior to the release of their games. Or at least, I don't remember there being one. Maybe there was one for Dragon's Dogma 2, but there hasn't been one for Monster Hunter, I'll tell you that much for free. Monster Hunter Wilds, so far, has been just an absolutely bizarre combination of sheer excitement and utter disappointment. And I want this game to be good. I really do. Because I fucking love this series. I've been playing these games ever since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate on the fucking Wii U, dude. I played Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate on a 3DS for nearly 700 hours. I played World for just as much, probably almost 800 hours at this point. I played Rise, and you know, that game was pretty good, and I really enjoyed my time that I had with it. I went back and I played Freedom Unite and Portable Third, and I loved my experiences with those. And all I can think of when I see Monster Hunter Wilds is just a bloated, complacent gaming industry that doesn't care to make good games anymore. Like, I'm jaded at this point, and all of my biases and negative thoughts on the gaming industry at large are just... they're coming to invade something that I hold very special to me, and I don't want to support this. So I'm just not gonna cover Monster Hunter Wilds at launch. I'm not going to buy this game. I'm not going to just be complacent with whatever's happening. If Capcom wants my money, they have to give me somewhat stable performance. It's just kind of embarrassing, and I'm just tired, man. I just want to play good games. I don't need my games to look this good. I don't need, you know, everything to be the highest possible quality it can be. I would happily play Wilds if it looked like how it did in Monster Hunter 4. Very happily. I would love it, actually. But no, instead this is what we get. This is what happens to one of my favorite game series of all time, and I'm despondent at this point. I'm crestfallen.